I mean, for most of us from the 1980s, we have a love for VHS. But to go out and make a documentary about it is a whole new other ball game. What inspired you to want to do that?
Well, actually, I was going through, during lockdowns and stuff like that, I was having these episodes of depression myself. So from the day one, I want to have like a, to make like a uplifting and positive film that brings people together. So this was like a nice excuse to explore on that one. And I think that I like that we're happy and comfortable with,
And what is it about VHS for you that surpasses, DVDs, Blu-ray? What is it the charm about VHS?
No, actually, that's why I'm bringing this like a prop, right? This is like a way to represent like physical media. It's not just VHS, but every physical media in general. To hold that in your hands, to be able to, to champion and treasure your film. It was more like that, So.
And what's remarkable as well is, with the VHS era, we're able to access film like we'd never been able to access it before. Is that something as well that you talk about within the documentary?
Well, there's a chapter in the documentary called The Future, where everyone is guessing that physical media is never going to be away at some point, and we need this. That's why we love to have find a new house for this film to kind of exist in some sort of physical media form, right? So, yeah.
And when you make a documentary, you obviously have a very kind of set idea of the story that you want to tell, yet you also have to be very open. And did the documentary take you on a journey maybe that you didn't expect and learn things that you didn't expect?
Yeah, I learned a lot from people's obsessions, but I was fascinated. Truly, not making fun. I hope I'm not making fun of the whole medium and the scene and everything. But yeah, there were some subjects and that were I wasn't able to cover in this one. So I have like a new structure for a sequel, actually. Right? Yeah.
And what do you hope that people will take away with watching the film?
To be real honest, I just wanted to put up a smile on people's faces, to make them feel good. And if they brought something from here and they start a conversation at their own homes, and it would be amazing for me just that, And being here at FrightFest is just amazing. Yes, it's the ultimate experience.
This is the home to horror, isn't it?
Yeah, this is the ultimate experience, so I'm very grateful, happy, and excited.
Where do you start with making a documentary about VHS?
Oh, well, see, that's the thing. We're not the first documentary to make... I was talking to Jake West.
Oh, yes, he did Video Nasties.
Yeah, I bumped into him at a drinks event here at FrightFest, and I was a bit intimidated because I thought, why am I telling you how to suck eggs? Because this is... And then, luckily, I bumped into him just before the screening, and I gave him my free ticket, and he sat next to me, and he kept nudging me, and at the very end of it, tapped me on the shoulder and said, well done. I was so happy that I got Jake West's approval. So
that's brilliant. So tell us about the film and what differentiates it from perhaps other films about.
Yeah, so the film, The Cult of VHS, is a documentary that is looking back at a time where, collecting VHS tapes, things like that, going to the video store. But it's also looking at today and how people are trying to go back and discover what it all meant to them as a child. The Video Nasties era, when you weren't meant to watch certain tapes and things like that. But it's all a massive euphemism for the fact that we just want to go back to our childhoods when it was much simpler, not having to work a job, not having to pay council tax, and we just want to go back to the time where we could watch Cannibal Holocaust or Freddy Krueger and just not have any cares in the world. And I think we've really done that with this film.
Something at the time as well, when VHS really became a thing, that was kind of liberating when it came to film, and we had access to film in a way that we'd never done before.
Oh yeah, completely. Like my dad says in the documentary, it was amazing that you could rent. I say rent, that's so weird. Rent your video player for the weekend, and then all of a sudden you could rewind, you could fast forward. You were in control. It wasn't something that I had to rush home to get to, watch Coronation Street or something. It was, no, we're going to watch this in our own time. We're going to, get a pizza. We're going to do all this. And I think looking at that now, that's something that we take for granted today. And I think over the years, we do take it more and more for granted because everything's becoming one click away. Back then, you had to be kind, rewind. You had to spend hours in the store, and there were no trailers to see what films looked good. You had to go by artwork. So there was a lot of effort involved, and I love that about the era itself.
And we could also get an appreciation for horror. We're at a horror film festival. It gave us all an appreciation for horror that we maybe didn't have before.
Oh, totally. I don't want to seem naive in saying this, but I think every film here at FrightFest owes something to the VHS culture. We have to give thanks to, all the films that we saw, Night of the Living Dead, Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday 13th. We wouldn't be here if it wasn't sitting downstairs in the front room where our parents were asleep with the volume on 2 or 1, trying not to wake them up, watching films we shouldn't be watching. And now here we are at a festival celebrating all things horror, and we're all filmmakers or fans. And more than that, we're a community now, and that's incredible.
When you were invited to, I suppose, participate in a documentary about VHS, it was a no-brainer?
Yes, I have no brain, that's true.
You had to do it.
Well, yeah, no, I'm always very happy to talk about the work because, for me at the time, all that work was almost throwaway stuff that, it was never intended to have any longevity. So to imagine that 40 years later I'll be talking about work I can't remember almost painting at the time, but it does actually take me back to a period of time which, is very different to now. So it's not just plain nostalgia, there's also a political context, and there's the way entertainment was packaged, and actually the nature of entertainment itself anyway, though, which is quite fascinating. But I know that VHS hit that point which actually disenfranchised, if you like, the bigger studios, because it became a public ownership thing, that actually you went and you could rent a VHS, take it back home rather than having to pay to go to the cinema, and that really changed a lot. And also it gave a chance for a lot of films which wouldn't have been exposed otherwise to suddenly be available. So for filmmakers it was a fantastic time, and I think VHS really heralded that 1980s golden era of horror. So VHS means a lot to me and all the fans for that reason. And actually know now that, of course, many directors go back to reference the 1980s. I don't think they always know quite why it's the golden era, but that's why, though, it's VHS.
Yeah, and what is it about, in this world of digital, there's something so tactile, isn't there, about VHS, and the whole mechanism, the noise, there's just something that just transports us, isn't it?
It does, and it takes you back to a better time when people were, I think, a lot nicer to each other. I was only a teenager, 10 years younger than Graham here, believe it or not, and it was just that thank you, and it's just going down to the little video shop at the end of our street, Hot Wax. He had a bit of vinyl in there as well, and it was the smell of going in there, and it just takes you back to that time. And it is like when now vinyls come back, and also my wife, she likes reading her books. She will never pick up a Kindle. It's just something about sniffing it, and that it's owning something and holding it. It's a possession, really, and it just it's like a little time portal.
And horror, what is it about horror that, I don't know, allows us to tap into human sensitivities that perhaps other genres don't? They're able to tap into it in a much deeper level, really.
Well, I think there's an element of addressing extremes in life and actually containing them. And I think horror films do that quite well. Things we can't control, you can contain in a film. And I think, even right now we're going through what, to me, I remember in the 80s, something people forget, that there was a lot of fear because we actually really believe we're going to be entering a nuclear war. And actually, just within the last 2 years, that same fear has now come back. So I think the 80s aesthetic, a nostalgia for that 80s thing, is almost like a way of dealing with the new threat, which is the same as the 80s threat. So it's very weird how it's kind of gone full circle in a way, though. But I mean, even I've seen a couple of films that have addressed that kind of paranoia and fear, which is happening right now, in a way which also channels the 80s. And it's quite fascinating for that reason.
I'm thinking as well, with censorship as well, that was a whole other kind of issue, wasn't it, in the 80s, and the video nasties and banning, and also kind of, I suppose, for a lot of us, the thrill of getting that video that you...
The Holy Grail, really, that's what it was like. It was getting that. But now you see much worse things on Midsummer Murders that are being shown at 8 in the evening. You know, it's a bit silly. And Friday the 13th, one of my all-time favourite films, certificated at 18, but now Sky put it out as a 15. So things change, attitudes change, and really it's all up here. It's that imagination that takes over.
Also, I would say there was a lot of hypocrisy about the censorship at the time, and there was one thing that was very clear in the Cult of VHS we saw later on. There was a bit of vintage TV footage, a man of the cloth, shall we say politely, a vicar, being confronted by a member of the audience. You know, obviously the vicar was very anti-video nasty, or what he perceived to be video nasty, and yet nobody thought to address to him what kids went through at school, Sunday school, at the church, with some of the stuff that's in the Bible, which is far more horrific than a lot of stuff that's being filmed. And actually the Bible is just full of images of horror and what I've described as early science fiction as well, though. I mean, really terrible, frightening things. But, and also, you know, you have the cross in any church with a naked, tortured man bleeding there. I thought, you have that in your church, and yet you're worried about these films. The kids are there every Sunday looking at this,